There's a woman living at the edge of a national park in Sweden. Outside her window, it's cold. Nordic-forest cold. But inside her home, fig trees are fruiting. Apricots, tomatoes on the vine. She steps out of her home office, not into a hallway, but into her own garden. Her actual living spaces, kitchen, bathroom, office, are two affordable prefab shipping containers. But she wrapped the entire thing in glass, and that glass shell turned a cold Nordic plot into her own private Mediterranean climate. I've covered a lot of prefab concepts on this channel. This one might be the most interesting design idea I've seen in a long time. Today we're breaking down exactly how this works, why it might genuinely be healthier to live in, and where I think it could go seriously wrong if you don't design it right. Before we get into it, if concepts like this are your thing, subscribe to Elite Prefab Homes. That's the whole reason this channel exists, and it genuinely helps us keep making videos like this one. Let's break down the actual concept, because it's simpler than it sounds, and also smarter than it sounds. You start with prefab containers. In this real example, 2 of them, handling the practical, private rooms of the home: kitchen, bathroom, office. The stuff that needs solid walls and privacy. Then, instead of stopping there, you wrap the entire structure in a glass greenhouse shell, creating a buffer zone of conditioned, sun-warmed air between the containers and the outside world. That in-between space isn't wasted square footage. It becomes the actual living space, where the food grows, where the woman in this story spends most of her actual life, stepping straight from her office into the garden instead of into a hallway. My honest first reaction? This flips the entire relationship between inside and outside that most home design assumes. Normally, your house is the warm zone, and the garden is the cold zone you visit occasionally. Here, the garden is the warm zone, and it's baked into your daily walk from room to room. Here's something worth knowing, because it changes how you should think about this whole concept. Wrapping a home in a greenhouse shell isn't new. Scandinavian countries have been building homes this way for decades, under a concept sometimes called a naturhus, or nature house, using glass enclosures to create warmer microclimates in genuinely harsh climates. The core physics is passive solar design, applied at a whole building scale. Glass lets sunlight in. That sunlight heats surfaces and air inside the greenhouse layer. That heat gets trapped by the glass instead of escaping. The same reason your car gets hot in a parking lot on a sunny day. Apply that same principle around your actual living quarters, and you're essentially using free solar energy to buffer your home against outside temperature swings. My opinion? What's genuinely new here isn't the greenhouse wrap concept. It's pairing it with prefab shipping containers specifically. Containers are cheap, structurally strong, and fast to place. Combine that speed and affordability with a decades-proven passive heating concept, and you get something that's both innovative and, honestly, kind of obvious in hindsight. Let's talk about the healthy living part of this, because I think it's actually the more interesting angle than the energy savings. In the real example we opened with, the homeowner describes tending the plants and harvesting dinner straight from the vine as something that keeps her mood steady in a way she'd never experienced under an ordinary roof. That's not a marketing claim. That's a genuinely well-documented effect. Constant exposure to greenery, natural light, and hands-on gardening is tied to measurable mood and stress benefits. Architects call this biophilic design, building spaces that keep humans meaningfully connected to living things, instead of sealing them away from nature entirely. Think about your own daily routine for a second. Most of us wake up, walk through hallways and rooms with zero natural elements, and maybe see a houseplant if we're lucky. In this design, your literal commute from your bedroom to your kitchen happens through a garden. That's not a lifestyle upgrade you bolt on later. It's built into the bones of the house. My favorite feature in this entire concept, hands down, that daily, unavoidable contact with a growing space. Not a garden you have to remember to walk out to on weekends. A garden that is physically between every room in your home. Let's get into the build mechanics, because I don't want this video to be all vibes and fig trees. The shipping containers handle the parts of the home that genuinely need solid, insulated, private walls. Bathrooms, bedrooms, kitchens, anything requiring plumbing and real climate control independent of the greenhouse's temperature swings. Prefab containers are ideal for this specific job because they arrive structurally complete, can be insulated and finished quickly, and their steel shell gives you serious durability against weather and pests, compared to a stick-framed structure built from scratch. The greenhouse shell around them handles a completely different job: passive heat capture, growing space, and that biophilic buffer zone we just talked about. In the real-world example, an automated rainwater collection system feeds the plants growing in that space, which cuts down on the manual labor side of keeping a garden this size alive. Design opinion here. I think keeping the containers as separate, discrete pods inside the greenhouse, rather than trying to merge everything into one undifferentiated space, is the right call. You still want clearly defined private zones. The greenhouse should feel like an extension of your home, not a replacement for having actual walls anywhere. All right, time for the part I always insist on including. Every genius design idea has a failure mode, and this one has a few real ones worth taking seriously. First, humidity and condensation. A greenhouse environment, by definition, holds a lot of moisture in the air, especially with an active irrigation system running. If your container walls aren't properly sealed and ventilated, that moisture will find its way into steel seams and insulation, and steel plus trapped moisture is a recipe for corrosion and mold over time. This is, without question, the single biggest engineering risk in this entire concept. Second, summer overheating. The same glass shell that traps heat beautifully in a cold Nordic winter can turn into an oven in a hot summer. Without serious passive or mechanical ventilation strategy, vents, shading, thermal mass to absorb excess heat, you can end up with a greenhouse space that's unusable for months out of the year, right when you'd most want to be outside enjoying it. Third, climate dependency. What makes this concept genuinely brilliant in a place like Sweden might make it genuinely pointless, or even actively bad, somewhere like Arizona or Florida. This design solves a cold climate problem. In a hot, humid climate, you'd need to flip a lot of these design assumptions on their head, or you'd be building yourself a very expensive, very uncomfortable sauna. My honest design mistake to flag here. And I see people make version of this constantly, with any passive solar concept, copying a design built for one climate and assuming it'll work identically, somewhere completely different. Passive solar and greenhouse wrap concepts are climate-specific tools, not universal blueprints. Before you fall in love with this idea, be honest about whether your actual climate rewards it or punishes it. Let's talk numbers. Because greenhouse-wrapped container homestead sounds like it costs a fortune, and it actually doesn't have to. On the affordable end, container-based cabin builds that pair a shipping container living space with an attached greenhouse have been designed and built for around $25,000, particularly when paired with off-grid solar power and a straightforward self-built approach. That figure assumes a foundation is already in place, and a good amount of labor is done by the owner, rather than hired out. On the component side, if you're building or retrofitting the greenhouse portion specifically, budget for insulation packages that can run anywhere from a few $1,000s for a basic vinyl-wrapped finish, up past $10,000 for a fully insulated, drywall-finished large container conversion. Add ventilation components, electrical packages, and climate control equipment, and a serious, well-executed greenhouse enclosure is its own meaningful line item in the budget. separate from the container structure itself. My honest take? This is not a shortcut to a free home. It's a shortcut to a genuinely unique, healthier, more energy-efficient home for a fraction of what an equivalent custom architectural build would cost. Realistic, but not free. Go in with that expectation. Here's a design and legal wrinkle that's genuinely unique to this concept, and I haven't seen enough people talk about it. A greenhouse structure and a residential living structure often fall under different code categories entirely in a lot of jurisdictions. When you combine both into one connected structure, you can end up needing separate approvals for the residential containers and the greenhouse enclosure, especially if the greenhouse is large enough or permanent enough to be treated as an addition to the home rather than a standalone garden structure. Before you commit to a design like this, get your local building department on the phone and ask directly how they classify a combined container and greenhouse structure. Ask about setback requirements, insulation, and energy code requirements, if the greenhouse is heated, and whether the whole thing needs to be permitted as one connected structure or as two separate ones. This is exactly the kind of question that's cheap to ask up front and expensive to get wrong after the fact. Let's be practical. Who should actually consider building something like this? If you live somewhere with real winters, genuinely cold, genuinely dark for stretches of the year, this concept solves a real problem. It extends your growing season, brings natural light and greenery into your daily routine during months when you'd otherwise barely see either, and captures free solar heat that your HVAC system would otherwise have to generate. If you already like gardening, or you work from home and want your commute to be through a garden instead of down a hallway, this is close to an ideal fit. Who should think twice? Anyone in a hot, humid climate where the greenhouse effect works against you instead of for you. Anyone who isn't willing to actively manage humidity, ventilation, and seasonal shading. This isn't a set-it-and-forget-it structure. And anyone who needs to move quickly through the permitting process, because combined structures like this typically take more back and forth with a local building department than a standard container home would. Here's where I land. I think this is one of the smartest small-scale housing concepts I've covered on this channel, specifically because it solves two problems most homes treat as unrelated: energy efficiency and mental well-being, with a single design move. Most energy-efficient design feels like a sacrifice. This one feels like the opposite. You're gaining daily contact with a garden, fresh food, and better light, while also cutting your heating costs. But I want to be honest with you. This is not a beginner prefab project. It demands real climate-specific engineering around humidity, ventilation, and seasonal heat management. Get those wrong, and you've built an expensive greenhouse full of mold instead of figs. Get them right, and you've genuinely built one of the healthier ways to live in a cold climate that I've come across. So is a greenhouse-wrapped prefab container homestead the future of healthy living? For the right climate and the right amount of hands-on care, I genuinely think it might be one piece of that future. It's not a mass-market solution tomorrow, but it's proof that combining old, proven passive design principles with modern, affordable prefab construction can produce something genuinely better than either idea on its own. If concepts like this get you as excited as they get me, that's exactly what Elite Prefab Homes is here for. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one, because we've got more unconventional builds coming. Would you actually want your commute between rooms to run straight through a garden? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one.